Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another video. Today, I'd like to address a misconception I see a lot in the astrological zeitgeist, and that is with Mercury Cazimi. And I'm going to get to that real soon and share with you, yes, the texts from the ancient world say one thing, but what I see often in reality and in practice can be quite different. And so I want to address a little bit of that. In the past, I've also done an extensive video on the deeper meaning of Mercury Cazimi. So if you do want to discover a little bit about that and some of the philosophical sense of meaning and purpose of the planets that speak to the heart and mind, the Sun and Mercury, when they come together, what that can mean and what that can feel like. I'll pop a link to that video below. Before I get into today's material, I do want to share with you that year one of my contemporary astrology program is open. We've started a fresh batch of students. Some are brand new. Some are just wanting to patch up the gaps from some self-taught learning and online research. And others just love to learn, and especially when it comes to the fundamentals. So if you're in one of those categories, or maybe even in a category I haven't thought of as yet, then you're more than welcome to join. It is a course that has a sort of a guided pace and structure, but of course, you can come and go as you please somewhat. We have recorded material, and we also do weekly catch-ups where we discuss the happenings of astrology. We have organic discussions that don't translate into recorded webinar material. So I'll pop the link below for that as well. You can jump into this group. There's pay in full, there's payment plans. And of course, if you would like to know more about it, is this going to be right for you? Do feel free to be in touch with me as well. Okay, so let's get into it. Mercury Cazimi. So the word on the street is, and of course my personal experience too, it has felt like a very Mercury retrograde kind of week. And I've had a few people reach out to me. I've seen it on some different online platforms where people are thinking, okay, yep, we're in this Mercury Cazimi week. Mercury's combust, but it's in its chariot, which means it's in a sign that it rules, which is the case for Mercury and Gemini. So why is it feeling like this? And it's a really great question. And this is one of those things, a technical term here, where what we see written in the books from the ancient world and how things show up in practice, in real life, and in experience don't always equate. So sometimes we do have to sort of take certain ideas and concepts on board, but with a grain of salt at the same time. So Mercury in Gemini, it has applied to square Saturn, which at the time of recording this video, it has passed. And now Mercury is what, 20 degrees, Sun is 22, and they're going to make their Cazimi, their conjunction, the superior conjunction at 24 degrees of Gemini. And that's going to happen on Friday, the 14th, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And for the likes of us in the South, that will happen on the 15th. Now, that is where Mercury gets fused with the Sun and is said to be reborn. Now, this combustion part is the part that I really want to address here, is that people think because it's in Gemini, then it has a proverbial get out of jail free card. And I personally don't see it that way. I'll use an analogy for you. I had a funny conversation with a friend this morning, and we were just having this joke around with me surviving in the Middle East with the color of my skin and the heat of the sun. I was like, well, it's not that much different to Australia. And yeah, I can cope here. I do have Mercury in Gemini in my first house, combust, literally, so I can cope, but I need to be well resourced. So in order for me to go outside, being a natural redhead, I do need sun protection, SPF, hats, clothing that covers my skin. I have been like that since I was a child. And so this is the situation Mercury is in right now. It has the resources it needs, aka sunscreen and hat, but it doesn't change the fact it's still under the heat of the blistering sun. So that's the reality. Yes, the resources are there, but it doesn't change the fact that it's getting burned. It just might prolong the burning, or it might just add a layer of protection there. So that's just a little bit of a nuance that I would encourage you to think about when you're looking at situations where a planet is combust, but you think it's protected because maybe it's Jupiter and Pisces conjunct the sun, maybe it or combust the sun, maybe it's Venus and Libra combust the sun. It's definitely got some resources to help it, but it doesn't change the reality that it is in extreme heat with the sun, and it's also invisible. So in the case of Mercury, when we're thinking about a planet that is combust, so in a very compromised position, it's invisible and it's well resourced, that can be, no pun intended, a very trickster archetype or very tricky archetype, aka the flavor of Mercury retrograde. When Mercury is well resourced, in its own chariot, it has more capacity to fly under the radar, to do things hidden, unseen, or create more chaos, create more confusion, create more a destabilizing influence. And I think this is where we can get a little bit caught up, a little bit tricked up, again, Mercury, with this condition. Because we can see that it's in its chariot, the go-to idea is, oh, it'll be fine. We don't need to worry about that. But the nature of Mercury is to be a trickster. When it's in its own sign, Gemini, it has maximum capacity to do that. It can do that with all the resources that it needs, and it can do that under the cloak of the sun, that invisibility because of the close proximity. We can see this collectively in terms of news, information, misinformation, disinformation, all of the things. Like literally, the online space right now is chaotic and crazy. There's that component. And you may have also seen it in your own life. I've had that this week where I feel like I've been living in a Mercury retrograde. There's been computer issues, software issues, and I was on the phone this morning trying to deal with some of them. And I said to the woman, like, am I just having, obviously I was forgetting for a minute, I wasn't talking to an astrologer. It's like, I know I'm having a Mercury Neptune transit, but, am I stuffing something up? And she says, no, everyone's having trouble trying to log into this software. So that was a moment of relief. But it does show this combination of Mercury having the capacity to create more of those Mercury mishaps. In addition, that applying square to the sun, to Saturn, making it more of a challenge, an obstacle, that proverbial brick wall that Mercury is attempting to duck and weave through. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a new way to think about Mercury, particularly in its chariot while it's in this position of combustion. I would advise you to not necessarily see this as it's in its own chariot. It's fine. It's in its own chariot and maybe more capable to do what Mercury will naturally want to do, which can be a little bit dubious at times. So that's just one way to think about this via transit. If you are in a situation in your birth chart, for example, where you may have Mercury combust, you might have Venus or Mars combust, whatever the planet is, this will be an area of life where it is going to be tricky. It is going to be challenging because that planet is hidden by the rays of the sun. Oh, but it's in its chariot, you might say, doesn't matter from my experience, because that planet's still invisible. It's almost like you've got all the resources to be a great guitar player, if it's maybe Venus combusts the sun. But if no one can see you, then, or hear you, what's the point, right? And so what I would invite you to do from a natal chart perspective is, if you do have a planet combust in your birth chart, look at what house topics that rules. Obviously, if the moon is close to the sun, that doesn't count. That is more of a lunar phase situation. So don't count the moon if you're sort of almost the new moon or past the new moon baby. But all the other planets will count except for Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So say, for example, if you have, Libra rising, Mercury is combust the sun. If we're looking at the configuration of now, we want to see what topics Mercury rules. So obviously it's going to rule the 9th, and it's also going to rule the 12th. So they're going to be the areas of life that may be challenging or difficult or a little bit of a blind spot. There might be a lot of possibility there, but it's not really showing through. Combust planets in the birth chart, when we look at the houses that combust planet rules, it reminds me of what I used to see on my own report card a lot as a kid growing up. She's got so much potential if only she'd apply herself. And when a planet's unseen, it can sometimes feel like, oh, what's the point? No one can see me. No one can hear me. I'm not visible. I'm not recognized. So why would I use those skills, gifts, and talents that you may have? So this may help you in not only observing Mercury, because we're talking about Mercury at the moment, the Mercury combustion via transit, but if you also have that condition in the birth chart. I've seen it time and time again with clients and students where they will have a planet well placed. Say it might be Saturn in Capricorn, might be Mars in Scorpio, Venus and Taurus, whatever the configuration is where that planet is in its rulership. But when it's combust the sun, it's a distinct and clear and astronomical phenomenon where that planet is invisible. So even if that planet is well resourced, it might give you a leg up. It might give you that sunscreen and hat. Doesn't change the position that you find yourself in. So I hope that helps you clear up some confusion and misconception around Cazimi. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And when terms get thrown around a lot, they do tend to get their meanings diluted. So the purpose of this little gospel according to Cass was to give you a new way of considering or looking at combust planets via transit and, of course, via the birth chart too. If you do have a combust planet in your birth chart, I would love to hear your experience. How do some of the ideas I've shared with you today play out in your experience? I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you like these kind of videos and my own takes on things that might be a little bit different to the norm, the Golden Circle is the place to find them. In the Golden Circle, which is my astrology membership group, you get videos each and every month outlining all the aspects, tips and tricks on how to navigate the sky, live your best life, improve your astrology along the way. And it's just a super cool, fun place. So if you would like to join or find out more information at the least, I'll pop a link below too, and I'd look forward to seeing you there.